I was hired as nothing more than a maid in his giant mansion. But little did I know, my billionaire boss would change my entire life. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. When I first walked up the long driveway to that mansion, I felt like I didn't belong. The house stretched higher than anything I had ever seen, tall windows shining in the morning light, marble steps that seemed too clean for someone like me to step on. My shoes were worn, and my nerves showed in the way I clutched my small bag against my chest. The staff at the door barely looked at me as they led me inside. Everything was polished, quiet, and perfect. I was there for one reason only, to earn money. My father's hospital bills had piled up so high that I had no other choice. The little jobs I'd been doing before weren't enough anymore. So when I got the chance to work here, even as just a maid, I grabbed it without thinking twice. The first time I saw Daniel Stone, I almost froze. He wasn't just rich, he looked untouchable. He stood tall, his suit pressed without a wrinkle, his face unreadable. His eyes, though, were sharp, as if they saw more than he ever said out loud. He gave me a short nod, nothing more. No smile, no welcome. Just a nod before he disappeared down the long hall with the sound of his polished shoes echoing on the marble. From that moment on, I kept my head down. I cleaned, polished, folded, and scrubbed. I learned which rooms were always empty and which ones were off limits. The other maids whispered that he didn't care much for conversation and hated mistakes. I believed them. Still, I couldn't help but notice the times he passed through the room when I was working. He would stop for just a second longer than necessary, his gaze lingering before he moved on. At first, I thought I imagined it. Why would a man like him pay any attention to someone like me? I told myself I was being silly, but it kept happening. I'd be dusting the shelves in the library, and I'd catch his reflection in the glass as he watched from the doorway. Or I'd be arranging flowers in the hall, and I'd feel the weight of his stare before I turned to see him standing there, silent. He never said anything, never crossed a line, but it was there, the quiet attention he thought I didn't notice. I tried to ignore it, tried to remind myself that I wasn't here for him, for this house, or for anything more than the paycheck. Still, each day I felt the pressure of his gaze, and with it came a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Because Daniel Stone wasn't just my boss. He was the kind of man who could destroy me with a single word, or change everything I thought I knew about life. It started small, so small I almost didn't notice at first. One morning while I was dusting near the dining room, Daniel walked past and stopped. Instead of just nodding like always, he asked me how my day was going. I froze, not sure if I should even answer. No one said he ever talked to the staff, unless it was about work. But he waited, his eyes steady, so I quietly told him it was fine. He gave a short smile, almost too quick to catch, and then kept walking. After that, little moments began to happen more often. Once, a guest at the mansion snapped at me for moving his coat the wrong way. I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but before I could apologize, Daniel appeared. His voice was sharp, colder than I'd ever heard it. He told the man to mind his manners, and that no one was allowed to disrespect his staff. The guest went quiet, but I didn't. My heart pounded because I had never expected anyone, let alone Daniel, to step in for me. Another time, after a long day of cleaning, I returned to the small room where I stayed and found a warm meal waiting on the desk. No one said where it came from, but I knew. The others didn't get things like that. He never mentioned it, never made it seem like a gift, but I couldn't forget. The other maids noticed too. I could hear their whispers when I passed by. Some said I was lucky, others that I was foolish. One of them warned me straight out in the laundry room. She told me that men like him didn't really see women like me, that it was dangerous to hope for more than just a paycheck. I stayed quiet, folding sheets, but her words stayed in my head long after. Not everyone kept it to whispers. Chloe made her feelings clear from the start. She was tall, sharp-tongued, and always carried herself like she was above the rest of us. Whenever Daniel walked into the room, she made sure she was the first one to greet him, her smile stretched too wide. But it never seemed to work. His attention slid past her like she wasn't even there, and that only made her colder toward me. She would leave extra work for me, little messes I knew she caused on purpose. She'd point out the smallest mistakes I made and mutter that I was getting soft treatment because of how I looked. I didn't respond, though sometimes my hands shook from how much I wanted to. The more Daniel noticed me, the more Chloe's eyes narrowed. I could feel her anger even when she didn't say a word. And deep down, I knew it wasn't just jealousy. It was something sharper, something that felt dangerous. But no matter how much she glared, no matter what the others whispered, Daniel kept showing me these quiet acts of care. And every time, it pulled me deeper into a world I wasn't sure I belonged in. It was late, and the house was quiet. Most of the staff had gone to bed, but I stayed behind in the kitchen, sitting at the small wooden table with a letter in my hand. It was another hospital bill, higher than the last one. I had counted and recounted the numbers until the page blurred. No matter how hard I worked, I couldn't keep up. My chest felt heavy, and before I knew it, tears slipped down my face. I tried to hide the sound by pressing my hand over my mouth, but the ache was too strong. I didn't hear him walk in. I only realized Daniel was there when his voice cut through the silence. "Emily?" I jumped, wiping at my face quickly, but it was too late. He had already seen. He didn't look stern or distant the way he usually did. He looked concerned. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I tried to say I was fine, but the lump in my throat kept the words stuck. He walked closer and pulled out the chair across from me. His suit jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up, and for the first time he seemed less like the untouchable man everyone feared and more like a person. His eyes fell on the paper I tried to hide. "Is it your father?" he asked softly. I nodded, staring at the table. "I can't cover it. No matter how many hours I work, it's never enough." My voice broke, and I hated how weak it sounded. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he leaned back in his chair, his gaze far away. "People look at me and think I have everything. The money, the house, the power. But what they don't see is the silence. This place feels like a cage most days. I have people around me, but no one I trust. No one who looks at me and sees more than my name or what's in my bank account." I lifted my head, surprised. His words sounded raw, almost like they slipped out without him meaning to. He met my eyes then, and the air between us shifted. It wasn't boss and maid anymore. It was two people, both carrying more than they could handle. Before I could stop myself, I whispered, "You don't seem lonely." His mouth pulled into a sad smile. "That's because I'm good at hiding it." He leaned forward, his voice low. "But when I see you, Emily, I feel something I thought I'd lost. You make this place feel alive." The confession hung in the air, heavy and fragile. My heart raced. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part screamed not to. Men like him didn't fall for women like me. It had to be a game, a passing interest. "I can't," I started, shaking my head. "I don't want to be some distraction you forget when you're bored." His hand moved across the table, not touching mine, but close enough that I could feel the warmth. "This isn't a game. I don't want anyone else. I want you." The truth in his voice cracked through my fear. Against my better judgment, against every warning in my head, I let myself breathe in that moment. And slowly, carefully, I gave in. After that night, everything between us changed. We didn't announce it, and we didn't have to. It was in the way he looked at me when no one else was watching, the way his voice softened when he spoke my name. The mansion was too big to be truly private, but we found our corners, our stolen moment. A walk through the garden late at night, his hand brushing mine as though by accident. A quiet breakfast in the library before the staff filled the house. A glance across a crowded room that said more than words ever could. Daniel began helping in ways that eased the weight I carried. He never made it obvious, never embarrassed me by bringing it up in front of others. But one afternoon I checked the hospital account and saw a payment had been made. Enough to cover the bills I'd been drowning under. I knew it was him. When I confronted him, he only smiled faintly and said, "You shouldn't have to fight alone." It scared me how much relief I felt, but it also warmed something deep inside me. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. And it wasn't just the money. It was the way he listened when I talked about my father, the way he asked about things that mattered to me, not just surface detail. Every day I felt myself falling deeper, and every day I tried to tell myself not to. But love isn't something you can control. I had never felt anything so real, so pure. The world had taken so much from me, time, security, peace. But now it felt like it was giving something back. I wanted to hold on, even if it was fragile, even if it scared me. Not everyone was blind to it. Chloe was the first to sense it. She noticed the way Daniel lingered near me, the way his mood shifted when I was around. Her eyes followed me everywhere, sharp and calculating. She would ask me pointed questions, pretending to be casual. "Why were you in the library so late? Funny how you always seem to be in the right place when he walks by." Her smile never reached her eyes. I tried to ignore her, to focus only on the quiet happiness I was finding. But Chloe didn't ignore me. She watched every detail, every slip, every secret glance. And each time I caught her staring, I felt a chill. It wasn't just curiosity. It was hunger, like she was waiting for the right chance to strike. Still, I held on to what Daniel and I had. It felt worth the risk. For once in my life, I believed I had found something that couldn't be taken away. I had no idea how wrong I was. It started with whispers I couldn't hear. Chloe was careful, clever. She knew how to smile in front of me, but her eyes gave her away. Something in the air shifted, though I didn't understand it at first. Daniel seemed distracted, quieter when we were together. He still held me, still looked at me like he always did, but there was a shadow there I couldn't name. One evening, he called me into his study. The room felt colder than usual, the fire in the fireplace giving no warmth. He sat behind his desk, his expression hard. On the polished surface lay a folder. When I reached for it, my hands trembled. Inside were printed emails, conversations that looked like mine. Words I had never written, promises of using him for money, mocking him behind his back. My chest tightened. This isn't me. I didn't write this. Daniel's jaw clenched. Chloe showed me everything. She said you've been playing me since the start. His voice was sharp, filled with a kind of anger I had never seen from him. I shook my head quickly, stepping closer. She's lying. I swear I would never. But he cut me off, slamming his hand against the desk. Enough! Do you take me for a fool? All this time, I believed you were different, but you're just like everyone else. After my money. The words sliced through me. I could barely breathe. Daniel, please. You have to believe me. I love you. My voice cracked, and the tears I had been holding back spilled over. He stood then, towering over me, his face hard. Get out. Tonight. I don't want to see you here again. For a moment, I thought he might take it back, that the man who had once held me so gently would see the truth in my eyes. But he didn't. His silence was final. Chloe stood by the door when I left. Her smile was small, cruel, satisfied. She didn't speak a word, but she didn't have to. I knew then that she had won. I packed my few things in silence. No one helped me. The staff avoided my eyes as if touching my pain would taint them too. When I stepped outside, the night air was sharp against my wet cheeks. The gates closed behind me, heavy and unforgiving. I walked down the long driveway, the mansion glowing behind me like a world I had never belonged to. My heart ached with every step, not just from losing him, but from the way he had believed her lies so easily. By the time I reached the road, I had nothing left but my bag and the hollow sound of my own footsteps. The life I thought I had found was gone in an instant, and all that remained was the sting of betrayal. The bus ride home felt longer than it was. I sat by the window with my bag on my lap, staring out at the dark streets while holding back tears. By the time I stepped into our small house, my body felt heavier than ever. My father was in his chair, thinner than before, his face pale. He smiled when he saw me, but I could tell he was weaker. Seeing him like that only made the pain sharper. I went to my room and broke down. The betrayal stung more than I could put into words. I felt foolish, like I had been living in some dream that was never real. I had believed Daniel when he said he cared. I had trusted him when he swore I was different. And yet, he had thrown me away in a single night, choosing Chloe's lies over my truth. For days, I carried the weight of it. I cried quietly when my father slept. I went over every moment with Daniel, wondering if I had missed signs, wondering if I had been blind. The shame ate at me, but the bills on the table didn't stop coming. I couldn't afford to fall apart, not when my father needed me. So I forced myself to move. I looked for work, anything better than what I had before. I found a job at a diner not far from home. The hours were long, the pay still small, but it was steadier, better than cleaning empty houses for scraps. I wore an apron instead of a uniform now, carried plates instead of polish. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept food on the table and gave me a sense of control again. Still, at night, when the diner lights shut off and I walked home in the quiet streets, I thought about Chloe. The way she smiled when I left the mansion haunted me. She had planned it, I was sure of it. And the more I thought, the angrier I became. I didn't want revenge just for myself. I wanted the truth to come out because Daniel needed to see what kind of woman he had trusted over me. If he had thrown me aside so easily, maybe he deserved the emptiness she would leave him in. But part of me still ached for him to know I hadn't lied. So I began to watch and listen. I reached out to one of the old staff members who had left the mansion months ago. He told me stories of Chloe, how she handled money and cut corners, how things went missing under her watch. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a start. Each shift at the diner, I carried trays with a smile, but in the back of my mind, I kept building a plan. I had been broken once, but I wouldn't stay that way. Chloe thought she had won, but she didn't know me well enough. She had built her trap carefully. I was going to tear it apart. It took weeks of quiet digging before I found what I needed. I met with Mark, a man who had once worked in Daniel's accounting department, but left after clashing with Chloe. We sat in a small cafe far from the mansion, the smell of burnt coffee between us. He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if Chloe herself might be listening. She's been taking money for years, he said. Small amounts at first, nothing anyone would notice. But then bigger transfers. She's clever, hides it under fake vendors and false receipts. I told Daniel once, but Chloe convinced him I was bitter about losing my job. Hearing that made my stomach turn. She hadn't just lied about me, she had been robbing him blind all along. I asked Mark if he still had record. He nodded, sliding a flash drive across the table. Everything's here. You'll see it yourself. That night, I sat at my old laptop and opened the files. My eyes burned as I read through document after document. Chloe had stolen thousands, maybe more. She had built her lies carefully, but the trail was there if someone looked closely enough. And now I had proof. With each page I scrolled, the anger inside me grew stronger. But so did something else, resolve. She had thrown me out like trash to cover her own crimes, and Daniel had believed her. I couldn't erase the pain of that night, but I could make sure she paid for what she did. While I worked quietly on my plan, Daniel was unraveling. Though I wasn't there to see it, word reached me through Mark and others who still worked around him. He was restless, cold even to the people he trusted most. He drank more than before, sat alone in his study for hours. The man who had once looked at me with warmth now looked at shadows, haunted by his choices. I didn't take comfort in his suffering. I only thought of the truth, that if he had trusted me, none of this would have happened. Still, part of me couldn't help imagining him sitting in that big house, thinking of me the way I thought of him. It was a thought I pushed down every time it surfaced. My focus had to stay on Chloe. She had power in that mansion, and she was still fooling him. But I had the edge now. Piece by piece, I gathered the records, marked the payments, traced the names of fake companies back to her. With Mark's help, I built a case she couldn't escape from. I wasn't the same girl who had left the mansion in tears. The hurt was still there, but it had hardened into something sharper. I wasn't going back for love or forgiveness. I was going back for justice. And when I was done, Chloe would lose everything she thought she had won. I didn't knock when I pushed the heavy doors of the mansion open. My hands shook, but not from fear this time. I had the folder clutched tight against my chest, the proof I had spent weeks gathering. The guards tried to stop me, but Daniel's voice carried from the hallway, telling them to let me through. The sight of him nearly stopped me. He looked tired, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his eyes darker than I remembered. But I didn't come for memories. I came for the truth. I walked straight into his study and dropped the folder on his desk with a sharp thud. The papers spilled out, bank statements, receipts, emails. "You should read these," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. Daniel's brow furrowed as he picked up the pages. His eyes moved quickly, and I saw the moment his face changed. Confusion first, then shock, then anger. His hands tightened on the papers. Behind me, the door opened and Chloe swept in, her voice sweet but edged. "What's going on here?" I turned to face her. "Why don't you tell him?" Daniel's gaze snapped to her, his jaw hard. "Chloe, these records. They show money missing. Fake vendors. All under your name." Her face paled, but she forced a laugh. "That's ridiculous. She's lying. She made those up." I pulled another sheet from my bag and slid it across the desk. "That's your signature on the transfers. Mark kept copies before he left. You thought you covered your tracks, but you didn't." Daniel stood, his voice sharp. "Enough. Don't lie to me, Chloe. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Chloe's mask cracked. She stammered, tried to spin another excuse, but Daniel slammed his hand on the desk. The sound echoed through the room. "You told me Emily was using me. You made me throw her out while you were the one stealing from me." Her eyes darted between us, her control slipping fast. "She's turning you against me. Get out!" Daniel roared, his voice shaking the walls. "You're finished here. Don't come back." 2 security guards appeared at the door. Chloe tried to push past them, screaming that she would ruin us both, that she deserved more than that. But they dragged her out, her voice growing smaller as she fought against them. Silence filled the study once she was gone. Daniel's eyes turned to me, heavy with guilt. "Emily," his voice was rough, breaking. "I was wrong. I should have trusted you." I stood frozen, my chest rising and falling. Part of me wanted to scream at him for not believing me, for choosing her lies over my truth. Another part just felt the weight of his regret pressing into the room. For the first time since that night, he saw me clearly. But it was too late for the simple love we once had. The damage had already been done. After Chloe was gone, Daniel tried to speak, but I turned to leave. I couldn't stay in that house a second longer. He followed me out to the steps, his voice breaking as he called my name. "Emily, please listen to me." I stopped but didn't face him. My hands were clenched at my sides, the anger still raw. When I finally turned, I saw something I hadn't seen before, fear in his eyes. "I've been betrayed before," he said, his voice low. "People I trusted, family, friends, they all used me. When Chloe showed me those papers, I didn't even question it. I was too quick to doubt, and I hurt you because of it." His words cut deep, but I didn't let them soften me. "You didn't just doubt me, Daniel. You threw me out like I was nothing. You believed her lies over my truth. Do you know what that did to me?" He flinched, his hands dropping to his sides. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right, if you'll let me." I shook my head. "It's not that easy. I'm not the same girl you pushed out. You can't fix this with money or apologies." For once, he didn't argue. He only nodded, his jaw tight. "Then I'll show you." And he did. The next week, he came to our small house, not in a suit, not with guards or grand gestures. He came quietly, carrying groceries, asking what my father needed. He sat by his bedside, listened to his stories, drove him to doctor's visits. He didn't try to buy forgiveness. He tried to earn it. At first, I kept my distance. I watched him carefully, waiting for the moment I'd see arrogance or pity in his eyes. But it never came. He treated my father with respect, spoke to him like he mattered. When I worked late shifts at the diner, Daniel was there to make sure my father wasn't alone. One night, after my shift, I came home to find them laughing together at the kitchen table. My father's face was brighter than I had seen in months. Daniel glanced up at me, and for the first time, his smile wasn't the guarded one I had known before. It was warm, simple, human. It didn't erase the pain. The memory of that night I was thrown out would always be there. But little by little, the walls I had built began to crack. He wasn't rushing me, wasn't demanding I forgive him. He was just there, steady and patient, proving through actions what words could never cover. And though I fought it, though I told myself I couldn't fall again, I felt my heart begin to shift. Because this wasn't the cold billionaire who had once judged me. This was a man willing to stand beside me without expecting anything in return. Time moved slowly after everything, but it worked in my favor. Daniel kept showing up, not with grand promises, but with patience. He never pushed me to forgive him, never demanded more than I was ready to give. He earned back my trust step by step, until the anger I carried softened into something else. One evening, months later, he asked me again, not like the first time, not with pressure. We were sitting on the porch of my father's house, the sun setting low, painting the sky orange. He held my hand gently, his voice steady. "Emily, will you be my wife? Not as my maid. Not as someone beneath me. As my equal. As the woman I love." I looked at him for a long time before answering. I thought about the girl who once polished floors in silence, the girl who cried in a mansion kitchen because she had nothing left. I wasn't her anymore. I was stronger now, harder in some ways, but clearer about what I deserved. So I nodded. "Yes. But this time, it's on my terms. I won't be hidden in your shadow. If we do this, it's as equals." The way his eyes softened told me he understood. Our wedding wasn't the kind of event people expected from a man like him. There were no flashing lights, no endless rows of strangers. It was small, held in the garden behind the house. My father was well enough to walk me down the aisle, his steps careful but proud. Daniel waited for me under an arch of white flowers, his face lit with something pure. When I reached him, the world seemed quiet. The vows we spoke weren't about wealth or promises of perfect happiness. They were about honesty, trust, and choosing each other even when it was hard. His voice broke when he said mine, and I felt the truth in his words. The moment we kissed, I didn't feel like a maid marrying her boss. I felt like a woman standing beside a man, nothing more, nothing less. Equal. Later, as the night settled and the guests drifted away, I sat with Daniel, my father sleeping nearby. I thought back to that night when I walked away from the mansion with nothing. It had felt like the end of everything, but now I understood it was the start. Being thrown out had forced me to see my own worth, to fight for myself, to demand more than scraps of affection. If I hadn't lost everything, I never would have found the strength to claim what I truly deserved, not just Daniel's love, but his respect. And as I leaned against him, the cool night air around us, I knew one thing for certain. Betrayal had broken me once, but it would never break me again.